Welcome to the Movement series, where we explore one book, one chapter at a time to ignite fresh vision for disciple-making movements around the world. I'm Isa, and this season, we're walking through Spent Matches by Roy Moran, a bold call to rethink church and re-engage the mission of Jesus in a radically practical way. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey, this series will challenge and inspire you to step into the movement God is already stirring. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Movement series, where we take a deep dive into the ideas that spark profound change. Today we're zeroing in on Chapter 8 of Spent Matches, provocatively titled From Marketer to Revolutionary.
Yeah, it's a chapter that really pushes back on conventional thinking.
Absolutely. It challenges our assumptions about leadership and transformation, unearthing powerful lessons from, well, truly unexpected places.
That's precisely right. The foundational idea here is that attempting to implement truly new strategies with old ingrained methods is a fundamental, almost self-sabotaging mistake.
Okay.
Think of it like trying to run a cool, cutting-edge new iPhone app on an outdated Android phone. They're built on entirely different platforms, speak different languages, and are, at their core, incompatible.
Right, that makes sense.
You simply wouldn't expect a powerful new solution to thrive if the underlying operating system isn't designed for it. This deep dive will explore how to avoid that common pitfall and embrace a truly revolutionary mindset for change.
Our goal for you, the listener, is to pull out the most impactful ideas from this chapter, challenging traditional approaches and offering a counterintuitive yet deeply effective path to creating lasting change in your own sphere.
Exactly. It's about finding those practical nuggets.
So let's unpack this first bit. What exactly is wrong with a marketer's mentality when it comes to bringing about deep systemic change? On the surface, it sounds quite effective, doesn't it?
It does, initially. A marketer's mentality, while excellent for launching new programs or products, ultimately has a limited shelf life when it comes to true transformation.
Okay. Limited how?
Well, it excels at generating temporary energy and excitement by harnessing communication channels and personnel, but that energy inevitably fades.
Right.
Because it focuses on programs and tactics which are simply forms rather than the underlying function or culture.
Form versus function.
Precisely. If you try to implement a new strategy using these marketing tactics within an existing organization, it will eventually be replaced by something newer and more exciting, just like any marketed product. It becomes a flash in the pan, not a fundamental shift.
This immediately brings to mind that ancient analogy of new wine into old wineskins from the biblical book of Mark.
Exactly that.
The old wineskins, rigid and set in their ways, can't contain the fermenting new wine. They simply burst. The author really drives home that we're not talking about just a new program here, but an entirely new culture, a new way of thinking and operating.
Yes, a whole new operating system, if you will.
You simply cannot pour something truly new into structures designed for the old. So, okay. But if that traditional approach is flawed, where do we look for truly revolutionary insights?
Well, this is where it gets interesting and maybe a bit uncomfortable.
Here's where the author takes us to an incredibly provocative and, frankly, jarring place for leadership lessons. He suggests we look to terrorist movements. That seems incredibly counterintuitive, even unsettling. Can you explain the author's reasoning there?
Yeah, it is jarring, and this is indeed a classic counterintuitive move. It's critical to state upfront that the author is absolutely not endorsing their ideology, their methods, or their violence. Not at all.
Okay, crucial distinction.
Instead, he's pointing to their organizational effectiveness from a purely strategic viewpoint, their capacity to motivate and organize people for profound, often global change.
Right. The how, not the what.
Exactly. Consider the shifts in global airport security. These movements have profoundly affected everyone around them. Their power, from a strategic perspective, lies in how they motivate and organize for change, not what their cause is. It's about dissecting the mechanisms of influence and impact, detached from the morality of the cause itself.
And what's particularly compelling is that the author actually connects this back to Jesus, describing him as a revolutionary whose strategy not only survived, but thrived for 3 centuries after his death, laying the groundwork for a global movement.
Yes, he draws that parallel.
This implies there's a timeless, powerful blueprint for change we can uncover by looking at these unexpected models.
That's the suggestion. And the first element of that blueprint, according to the author, is radical commitment.
Radical commitment. Okay.
It's simply not enough to be curious about new ideas or even just frustrated with the status quo.
Mm.
You need a bone-deep commitment to the cause, something that transcends personal comfort or gain.
So more than just interest.
Much more. The author gives a challenging litmus test. Would you be interested in a strategy that grows Jesus' kingdom, but doesn't add volunteers, dollars, or attenders to your specific church services?
Oof. That's a question that cuts deep for a lot of people, myself included. For many in traditional roles, such a positive answer could even lead to professional uncertainty or unemployment.
It really could.
That really highlights how truly countercultural and demanding this level of commitment needs to be.
It does. The author even admits he's irrationally committed to this path, willing to work at Starbucks if it means genuinely catalyzing movements. That kind of commitment is rare, and it's positioned as foundational.
Okay, so that's the first element. What's next after that radical commitment?
From that commitment, we move to the second strategy. Start at the fringes, not at the front.
Start at the fringes. So this means resisting the common urge to roll out a new ministry strategy to the entire church or Sunday school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Big launch event, banners, the whole.
Exactly. Avoid that. Attempting to launch a radical departure from established methods from the front of the room, involving everyone at once, with public announcements and heavy marketing, creates an illusion of power.
Illusion of power. Interesting.
The reality is, large organizations, especially churches, are like aircraft carriers. They don't turn on a dime. A big public launch of a truly new approach often invites resistance and trouble because it threatens established norms and power structures.
So instead of the big splash,
You find the wholly discontented.
the wholly discontented, I like that phrase. Who are they?
These are the people who are already externally focused, maybe have more relationships with non-believers, and are genuinely frustrated with traditional structures that aren't yielding the desired results. They feel something's missing.
Okay.
They are the ones ripe for a new way of thinking and doing, the new wineskins, if you will, ready to embrace a different approach.
So you identify those people first.
Yes, and that leads directly to the third element.
Start small.
Start small. Makes sense if you're starting on the fringes.
Exactly. The recommendation is to consider a test group of maybe 6 to 20 people, ideally splitting them into even smaller groups of no more than 5.
Very small groups.
This strategic approach allows you to fail in obscurity. Many organizations, particularly in faith communities, have an allergic reaction to failure, viewing it as a sign of weakness or maybe even divine disapproval.
Yeah, that's definitely a cultural thing sometimes. So a small, safe space for experimentation is absolutely vital for learning and adaptation without triggering that big immune response from the larger organization.
So the emphasis is on these small, focused groups, a space for safe experimentation. And as the author reminds us, when you're experimenting, you will encounter bumps and missteps.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a journey where you won't know what you're doing at first.
You really won't. Not fully.
That's why having a coach for practical skills and a mentor for the internal turmoil and frustrations is so crucial.
Yes, that support is key. It's about learning to risk big strategically, but fail small, making those failures productive learning experiences.
Which brings us to our next point. Failure isn't the enemy, it's the mentor. So how do you learn to fail faster and smarter in this process? What does that look like?
Well, this entire process is far more art than science, much like a startup iterating rapidly. Learning comes not from theoretical study in a classroom, but from the actual process of trying, failing, or even partially succeeding out in the real world.
Learning by doing.
Exactly. The key is a simple, consistent postmortem process after each attempt, each experiment. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What would we do differently next time? It's about creating these continuous feedback loops.
And the source gives such a vivid example of this. The shift from Discovery Bible Study to Discovery Group.
Yeah, that's a great practical example.
They learned through real-world experience that non-believers resisted the term Bible study because it often made them feel unknowledgeable or intimidated.
Made them feel stupid, yeah.
So they adapted their language and approach based on that feedback. That's failing smarter, right?
Absolutely. It's a powerful, tangible example of shedding dragon skin, those deeply ingrained assumptions or old ways of thinking that, despite good intentions, inadvertently hinder progress.
Shedding dragon skin. I like that imagery.
It's about being humble enough to adapt and let go of what isn't working, even if it's familiar or comfortable.
Okay, so those are the 4 key strategic elements. Now, the chapter also talks about some crucial mind shifts needed for this kind of revolutionary approach? What's the first one?
A major transformative shift is from a knowledge-focused to an obedience-focused approach to disciple-making.
Knowledge to obedience.
Our Western traditions, especially in education and often in church, emphasize accumulating theological knowledge or information. We value knowing things.
Right. Learning facts, doctrines.
But the profound truth, the author argues, is that genuine spiritual growth is about doing what God says, actually living it out. The Apostle Paul reminds us that knowledge puffs up, suggesting that mere intellectual understanding can lead to arrogance without corresponding action.
This challenges the very idea that spiritual maturity comes from intellectual understanding alone. It's quite countercultural to how many of us were raised, maybe.
It really is. A striking point the author makes is that Jesus needs the willing, not necessarily just the equipped in terms of knowledge.
The willing, not just the equipped.
Yeah. The classic Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis story, where doctors spread disease despite their medical training because they refuse the simple counterintuitive act of washing their hands.
Oh, right. That story.
It really highlights this. Expertise and knowledge, without the willingness to adopt the right, sometimes simple or counterintuitive approach, can actually be detrimental. It's a powerful lesson in practical obedience over pure intellect.
Okay, so knowledge to obedience. What's the next mind shift?
It's moving from thinking about human reproduction to thinking about viral replication in terms of spiritual growth.
Okay, human reproduction versus viral replication. So not a slow one-by-one growth.
Exactly. Traditional thinking often suggests a long, slow maturation process, years, maybe decades, before someone can truly reproduce spiritually and lead others effectively, like raising a child.
Right, a very linear model.
But the Great Commission, Jesus' command to make disciples of all nations, actually resembles viral replication. It's simple, it's repeatable, and it's potent near the point of transfer.
Simple, repeatable, potent.
It's about submission of will and immediate application, sharing what you've just learned and obeyed, rather than waiting for years of content accumulation before action. The power is in the potential for exponential multiplication, not just slow, steady, linear addition.
That changes the timeline dramatically.
It does.
This raises an important question that I think a lot of people wrestle with. If we're not just planting churches in the traditional sense, with buildings and established programs, what exactly are we doing? It sounds like we need to clarify what church even means in this revolutionary context.
Yeah, that's a really critical clarification. The author is very clear on this. Jesus commanded us to make disciples, not primarily to plant churches as an end in themselves.
And disciples first.
Right. When disciples are truly made and they learn to multiply, meaning they make disciples who make disciples, then healthy churches naturally form as a result of that activity.
Okay, so the church is the outcome, not the initial.
Exactly. The problem arises when we prioritize the form, the buildings, the specific programs, the institutions over the function, and the core function in this context is multiplicative disciple-making.
Form over function again.
Yes. Think of Kodak focusing obsessively on film as the form rather than the broader image business function. That focus on form allowed them to miss the digital revolution entirely.
And they became obsolete.
Right. By contrast, think about Lego. They focused on the function of play and creative building. So they adapted their forms from simple wooden blocks to plastic bricks to complex kits, video games, movies. They stayed relevant and thrived because the function drove the form.
That's a great analogy. So a simple biblical definition of a church in this model would be?
It would be something like a dynamic group of people who are learning to obey God together, living in genuine community with other disciples, and actively seeking to change their world through making more disciples who also make disciples. Multiplicative disciple-making is key.
That definitely challenges what the author calls ecclesialatry.
Yeah, that sort of excessive veneration of the church institution itself, rather than its core purpose or mission in the world.
It really flips the emphasis from institution to movement. Okay, what's the next mind shift?
This one is huge for leaders. It's shifting from being a content provider to being a learning designer.
Content provider to learning designer. Explain that.
So instead of seeing themselves as the subject matter expert or the primary content provider who lectures, preaches, tells people what to think, and delivers information.
The sage on the stage model.
Exactly. A revolutionary leader, in this view, becomes a learning designer. This means cultivating deep patience for people to discover truth for themselves, facilitating that journey rather than dictating it. They design environments where discovery can happen.
That's a profound shift from basically telling people answers to helping them find their own answers. What does that actually look like in practice? How do we foster that environment where the learner truly drives the agenda?
Well, it means the focus isn't on how much the teacher talks, but how much the learner participates, interacts with the material, and makes meaning for themselves.
More interaction, less lecture.
Definitely.
Yeah.
This means starting precisely where the learner is, with their questions, their context, their needs, letting their questions and discoveries drive the agenda, not a preset curriculum necessarily, and allowing them to be the author of their own conclusions, drawing insights directly from the source material, like the Bible in this context. The ultimate goal is to help them hear directly from God, rather than the leader mediating the message or being the sole conduit of truth.
It's empowering the learner to connect directly, rather than relying on the leader as the main source.
Exactly. It's a very different leadership posture, more guide on the side than sage on the stage.
As we wrap up this deep dive in the movement series, it's clear that the call from Chapter 8 of Spent Matches is a profound challenge to our existing paradigms. It really is.
It absolutely is.
It's a call to move beyond merely marketing new programs and instead become revolutionaries committed to establishing a new culture of multiplicative disciple-making.
And that's not easy. It requires that radical, bone-deep commitment we talked about. It takes a willingness to start small and often hidden at the fringes.
Yeah.
And crucially, an embrace of failure, not as an end, but as a vital learning opportunity. It's a whole different way of operating.
It means rethinking our understanding of knowledge versus obedience, of spiritual reproduction, and even the very definition of church and what effective leadership looks like in that context.
Yeah, pretty fundamental shifts.
Ultimately, it all seems to come back to listening to Jesus and focusing intently on making disciples, not primarily for our own gain or institutional preservation, but for the exponential growth of his kingdom.
That's the core message. So the question then becomes, what does this all mean for you, the listener, in your own context? What layers of that dragon skin, those old assumptions or familiar methods, might you need to shed to embrace a truly revolutionary approach to your own calling and influence?
Powerful question to reflect on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration of revolutionary thinking provides you with compelling insights and perhaps some challenging new perspectives.
Hope it sparks some thought.
Join us next time for another deep dive into the ideas that matter.
Thanks for joining us on the Movement series. If today's conversation stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter as we continue walking through Spent Matches by Roy Moran. Until next time, keep leaning into the mission, because movements start when ordinary people say yes to an extraordinary God. To get connected and learn more, visit newgenerations.network.